Welcome, Chris Evans Radio. We are back with Little Dave, and we are cranking on another great episode. The feedback has been incredible. And a question that we actually got that I thought we would start this podcast off was they had listened to the leg or Why Your Legs Suck podcast we did, and they said, Chris, like, how did you and Dave acquire that skill? Was it taught to you? Did someone show you? So I thought what I would kind of dig in and talk about is like my perspective, and then I'll let you talk about like how you got there. Because when you came in for the first time, like you already had that ability. So like for me, the thought process had always been, once I watched enough training videos of like Branch and Ronnie and Jay and like really studied bodybuilding, like I realized the guys who were the biggest were the ones that were just doing psychotic shit in the gym. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, how can I replicate that and repeat it? Because I'd already learned like that 100% switch in football, right? Like I knew what it felt like to gas it. I just had to apply that to the weight room. And my mentality there was, I need to take a set places that would break 99 out of 100 people and then just repeat it. And then my thought process was, if I can get to that spot each week, each month, each year, take it up a notch so that I continue to segment past the people who don't train as hard. And that way no one could catch me in terms of training intensity that was behind me in my rear view, right? And then I think the final piece to that for me was when, and I think I've shared this story plenty of times, like when I got to go to Elite FTS with John for the first time, like Dave Tate showed me the next level, that like the what I will consider Mount Everest. And to this day, I haven't seen another man or woman take a set there. You could probably argue like Michaela Aycock has done it, but it was on that level. And I'm still to this day chasing that set that I witnessed at 23 years old. So, yeah, like that's I think that's how I got there. A kind of a follow-up question that I had was like, is there any ritual or something that you guys do? And I shared with him, like, I just literally look up and say, watch over me, God, Mom, and John. And like that just takes the fear of injury out of my head. Like I remove all doubt because I kind of put it in their hands and say, like, if today's the day that I break, I do it. But
yeah,
not going to be because of this breaks. It's going to be because I have a break in my body. So like that's kind of a brief overview of how I got there and then what I do beforehand. How about you?
yeah, the same basic aspect. I remember, yeah, more so same thing. Instead of football, it was wrestling, and it was more so actually the conditioning part of wrestling what got me to know where that execution level was at, because we would our coaches would just have us run sprints until someone threw up. It was pretty common.
Yeah,
and it was like you knew where that was, and it was so like it was fun too, because like most people actually just started slowing down, and it was like, fuck you, I'm just gonna run faster.
right.
You got so much more in the tank than you really think you do. Especially, and then you go wrestle on the mat and you're like, you don't have a choice. You're either gonna gas out or you're gonna just lose.
Yes.
So it's the same concept, and it's just like, I'm not gonna get beat by this 100-pound piece of metal,
right?
Until I am.
Yeah, right.
And just going in there and just honestly, I kind of go to a blank space in reality. Like, I think you've seen me start a set. I'll take a couple good deep breaths through my nose and just like, I'm mentally there when I'm locked in. And it really doesn't matter. If I lean back with those dumbbells, it's going to happen.
You go bug-eyed. It's like this.
Yeah.
Your eyes get wide. The moment your eyes get wide, like, I know you're in.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's one of the first times, like after you trained back with me that first day, Chad was like, just watching his facial expression, you can see like the switch just flip. And then he goes. And he said to me, I think it's going to show up really cool on camera.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of those things. I'm doing something in my head where I just turn it on and it's there. It's like the best way I can explain it, but like honestly, it's funny too because like it's drastically changed as I've gotten like better at lifting. Like I used to get to that spot from a place of anger.
Same.
I would pull out some bullshit thing of my childhood and just be like, and use that as fuel. And then I actually remember when COVID happened and the world shut down, right? I had access to a gym and I was like super grateful for that.
Mhm.
And now, like, I kid you not, like that void where I look like I'm gonna kill someone is legitimately a place of gratitude.
Right. Yep.
And like it actually, I kid you not, I don't know if people will ever believe me, but it works better than just anger.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and it's funny because it just goes in there. It's just like, okay, cool. You know, and it's not even hard. It doesn't like the fun part about like using anger, right? You're pretty fucked up after that.
Yeah.
Right? Mentally, you're kind of fucked up. Like using just like thankfulness.
Mhm.
Like honestly, I leave the gym and I'm a better person. Like, but I still get to the same spot. And if I told that to most people, they'd probably be like, "That's a load of crap." But like, I mean, give it a go, see what happens.
You know what's interesting is that's something that Angel has been working on with me mentally. Is I use like you, I used to use anger. I had a prep in 2019 where I had a good buddy of mine, or I thought was a good buddy at the time, tell me that like you'll never be in shape with where you're starting, and I used that every work set. Like I'd look at my training partner and be like, I'm gonna show that motherfucker. Like just watch. And I'd get
Yeah,
mad and I'd like just say his name in between sets and shit. Like, and it was a negative place, and like especially after John's death, it's the same thing. Like negativity, like hatred, anger, small, skinny, fat, like, all the shit. And she's like, Chris, like, what if instead of anger and hatred, it was instead of my back sucks, I'm gonna make that fucker grow. What if it's my back is gonna grow because I have a plan and I'm gonna execute it and I'm gonna eat your meals? Like, what if
yep,
it's that? Like, what if I'm doing everything right? It has to grow. It doesn't have a choice because I'm doing the right stuff. I'm not mad at it.
yeah, yeah. It's funny. I honestly sometimes it's a mixture of both.
Right.
You know, especially like deep in the prep, like fuck, I might as well use some childhood trauma. Like, get rid of this. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's gonna come from somewhere. But like,
Right.
a lot of the times, like, it's honestly just me being excited to be there. You know, be able to do that, and
Mhm.
that gets me 90% of the way.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I
And
think too, I watched like a lot of branch shit when I was a kid, right? So, I mean, you've trained with me enough to know, like, sometimes I was like, come on, motherfucker. Like literally screaming at myself, like spit on the
yeah,
floor, sit back and just go. Like, and then sometimes like I'm just like, okay, I have to like calm my brain, especially if we're gonna do something crazy that's an extended set. Like I gotta know
yeah,
that I can't drive my heart rate that north to where if you were gonna do like if we set back with the 150s on an incline, I know I'm not gonna press it over 15 times. So it isn't like I need a 2 minute gas tank where if we're gonna do say walking lunges until one of us falls over, like I can't get my heart rate that north at the beginning or I'm never gonna last.
no,
You just peter out.
yep,
Too much adrenaline. So
mhm,
I think it's one of those things like the more you tap into that, the more almost comfortable and just like you're used to it. And I mean, I think that's why when you hear us say like it's just normal Thursday for us, like it's nothing crazy, like that's our leg day. And I think it's because I think comfort might not be the right word, but it's just that's what's required. So that's what we do, and
yeah,
it's expected. And if it's not, it's a deload week or it's an off week.
mhm,
or it's peak the peak week.
yeah, exactly.
So I think that's a good segue into what our topic today is, and it's training intensity, meaning like low volume versus high volume and reps. And I text you and I was like, what's right, what's wrong, and can you do both? Like, and since we just talked about intensity, what to me the most logical thing to start with is if you can't do a set and then replicate that 6 to 10 times, given a body part, volume has to be your modality for growth. Or if you don't
Yep,
go there physically, mentally, or a combination of both, you have to choose volume. And you
yep,
have to do the RPE, Renaissance periodization, whatever the fuck you want to call that, like 90s bodybuilding training, as most people like Charles Glass shit. Like, you have to choose volume because you can't do low volume and low intensity.
Well, the thing that always makes me laugh is you got a lot of these up and coming like kids. We'll call them kids. I always feel like an old man when I say this, but like, you got these like 20-year-olds. They've been training for 2 years and they're like, "Oh, I'm going to do a high intensity split." It's like, well, that doesn't really matter. Like, if if you're, even if you think you're going, most of us only train to where we think we're hitting failure. We're not actually hitting failure, right? We go to where we think we hit failure. Like, if we had like a cattle prod, we'd probably get like, even me, you know what I mean? You're probably your brain's gonna say fuck around until we can find out.
Right.
You may never recover from that. That's a completely different aspect.
Right.
But take things to failure, you need to be good at them, right?
Yeah.
The first time you've ever bench pressed, right? Go back to think about it. The first time you ever bench pressed that, you picked up that bar and you were like this. You're riding a fucking bike.
Yep.
Why? Because you don't know how to use your muscles. Right?
Yep.
I can do that. I can pick up 315 and hold it Steelers. Like, you could put your phone on one side and it wouldn't fall off.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
That only comes through repetition.
Correct.
So doing super low volume and high intensity without knowing how to do it is like legitimately like just throwing, like, you need the volume to learn how to do intensity. You can't do intensity without first do it. It's like going to school. Like, if you dropped off your 6-year-old in a college campus and we're like, learn, right?
Go figure it out.
It wouldn't happen, right? They're going to start, you're going to start with super basic stuff and you're just going to keep building onto that.
Yep.
Until you get into specifics. Where nowadays everybody's just going to go into specifics and they've never done general work.
Right.
And they wonder why they aren't growing.
Yep.
Like,
I think too, like that ties in with food, right? Because they say I can eat. Well, it's because you aren't doing enough work to stimulate your appetite. It doesn't matter if you and I train all season or pre-contest. After a workout, you and I are both like, okay, from elite, it's gonna take us 25, 30 minutes to get home. By the time we get back to my house, it's like someone's got to eat.
Yeah, it's not even. It's like someone's gonna die if there's no food.
Correct. And I think a lot of times, like, that's what guys don't consider is when they're trying to balance out that intensity versus volume. Like, I've always felt like, especially beginner, intermediate, low level, advanced, like, you have to do volume, and then through that volume process, learn how to take intensity. And it'll happen naturally, in my mind. Like, that's what it worked out for me, right? Like, as I got more mature and advanced as a bodybuilder, I could do less and less sets as a whole over the course of my week or workout or, body part, however you want to view that. Like, you said, I think it was last week before, like, you, Zach, and your buddy hit 7 sets of legs. Like, I've been doing 5 to 7 sets, 5 to 8 sets of legs for the last 2 years, and my legs are progressing because I don't need any more. But then you take something like an arms or shoulders for me, and you can do, those can take more volume and more intensity and still progress. Like, so you can actually do both given experience level per body part, or go back and forth. Like, there's no reason you can't have periods of your year where you do more volume base, periods where you do more low volume, or you might find that a certain body part responds best to a lower volume or a higher volume. And then something that I think, like, kind of breaks all rules, so to speak, is body parts that you connect with can take drastically less volume because you connect to it instantly, right? Like, my hamstrings may only need 3 sets a week, 2 sets a week, because I can turn those things on a leg curl and I'm good. Like, they're pumped, they're swollen. You can't say that my hamstrings are weak. I've been consistently doing 2 sets of hamstrings all year long. Dude.
Yeah, and like I said, that goes back to learning how to use your muscle.
Right.
Like, it's one of those funny things. It's like almost like no one wants to take a step back and look at things, right? Like, there's some strong motherfuckers out there But progressive overload kind of has a wall.
Right.
If we're all just intensity progressive overload, I mean, Jordan Peters is a fucking monster.
Correct.
But I'm not saying it doesn't work, but if you look at like me, for example, I've spent the last 3 years benching the 150s.
Right.
And
Do it better.
the fun thing is, if you look at three years ago when I first picked, I was like, okay, cool, I'm good to pick these up and use them.
Mm-hmm.
Form has improved drastically.
Right.
Tempo has improved.
Yes.
Into the first year, from all the way back to the first year, till now, those things have improved. And then a year ago to now, form was dialed in, and form hasn't changed. But the thing you don't see is my connection to that. Like, I'm physically getting more out of that movement from the mind muscle connection was not a real thing in science, and the pump I get off of it is just nuts. Mm-hmm. Versus like it never used to be that way. Like even like just a year ago, like I'm still using the same weight. I'm getting the same amount of reps. I'm getting a better pump.
Yep.
Right. My chest is getting fucked up from less. Mm-hmm. And it's like, oh, weird. That's low. And that's why I can do lower volume. Versus like when I first was doing the 150s, it was just more generalized fatigue because everything like I was doing the same thing, but everything was just not used to it.
And you know what's funny is I drastically remember this. Your chest progression in terms of size between your qualifier and USA's was nuts, was nutty to look at. Yeah. Right? You grew a chest in between those two preps. I'm not exaggeration. They literally grew. And then out of USA's 2 North Americans, you just built off of that. So your chest did not used to be a strong body part at all. Now the thing is full and round when your hands are overhead from the side and most muscular. Like it's drastically different. So if you just speaking about that, like your weight progression didn't change, but there's aspects of how your chest looks and sits drastically did.
Yep. And that's one of those unquantifiable things because like I just said I got a better mind muscle connection. And legitimately people are saying that's not a thing. And it doesn't matter. And it's like, I mean, good luck finding another fucking dude like me to pull a science project on because all your science projects for those studies I can guarantee they're not finding some 5 foot tall, 5'5", 230-pound dude to do the studies. Why? Because there's like probably like 100 of us.
Right. Yeah.
And, just put that in your notes when you keep your studies there.
I always say this, like, I think my progression in weights on shoulders and arms have changed in the last 6 years. Yet my shoulders and arms are way bigger and rounder and fuller and have a different dimension, right? Like those 2 body parts didn't used to jump off the bone. My shoulders used to be my worst body part, period. And then it's like once John taught me how to train it, like the right sequencing and rep range. And then I said, okay, cool. If I marry that with improving my form, let's just see how much pain I can take. And then once I started doing that, they literally just look almost alien when I have a pump. Like it looks wild. And the science community would say all of that doesn't matter. Volume doesn't matter. Pumps don't matter. Weight progression is number one. I'm still doing rear laterals, starting my first set with 15s or 20s. And how many guys and girls do you see doing more than that and bent over rear laterals in the gym and their shoulders are like this? There's no cap to them. You can't.
Dude, I was just at the gym today, and there was this kid doing hammer curls with the 80s. He's 160 pounds, Jeez. And I was just like, he would be pissed the fuck off if he saw me doing hammer curls because I'm going to use the 40s.
Right? Yeah. Same.
He's gonna look at me. He's like, this guy's it's just steroids.
All drugs. Yep. He must shoot them things with synthol. He's like, I'm doing double his weight while my arm's 14 and a half inches pumped.
Right.
Oh,
no idea there.
Right. Because I can say this, right? Like when you and I train together, I would say for the most part, we just floor intensity and volume is in the middle. Like I wouldn't say it's low. I wouldn't say it's high. Well, for arms, maybe that one day we had at pros was high, but even we cut sets off that I'd initially planned on. So like it's very much instinctual based. Like we both have a rough outline of what we're gonna do, and then I kind of just like say, let's do this. All right, cool, let's do
Yeah.
this. Awesome. Like, and then we just work our way through it. Like, and then depending upon like if we use a newbie or like just how we're feeling in general that day, like we may do more or less, but it's to the point where the muscle is finished. And I think that that only comes with experience, right? Like a young kid can't go in there and say, "Oh, my muscle's finished," unless he had something tangible to track that with. Of like, and even then, like if I said, "Hey," like if the younger version of you, if I'd have said, "Hey, when your pump starts going away, step away," that's so hard for an experienced or even a low level advanced guy to probably hold himself accountable to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because what do you mean? Well, I'm still kind of getting a pump. No. It diminished 3 sets ago. Go home.
Yeah. Yeah. No joke. Like
So
it's one of those things. It's just back to like just paying attention because it's like you get asked all the time, how many steps do you need? It's like, well, that depends. Like if you do another one and it gets better, the pump gets better, by all means keep going. But if you do another one and it doesn't get better, it's like, well, that's it. Because chances are if you do it again, it's just going to get worse from there. You know.
you've done a lot of John programs,
Mm-hmm.
and I think I've done them all. So something that I always ran into with clients or just people who did the programs and they'd ask me questions about it. So you remember those days where he would be like, "I want you to do a set of 15, a set of 12, and a set of 10, and I want 10 to be failure." I think the problem that most people would run into is, let's say you and I were pressing the 150s and we hit 10 but had more in the tank. So many people would either just drop those dumbbells and move on to the next exercise. Where to me, and I know this I'm going to speak for both of us here. If that's us, we're either going to take those 150s and do 15, or we're going to sit them down at 8 or 6 and pick up the 160s. But Chris, I've already done my 3 sets. Well, that third set wasn't where it needed to go.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's really
it's kind of a fun way of going into it too, because like the way I hate seeing like 3 sets of 10 written down on paper,
right.
Because there's like, you tell me to do 3 sets of 10, and the first one I'm just going to take past failure,
right,
and then the second one I'm barely going to be able to get 8, and then the third one it's going to end up being a rest pause till 10,
right,
and I'm going to be fucked. Versus like someone who does like a nice set of 10 adds a 5, another easy set of 10 adds a 5, and then has a moderate set of 10, and then it's done, right? Those are still 3 sets of 10.
Right.
But like, I'm going to be the person who took all 3 of those to actual failure. You know what I mean? Well, versus like, getting more than 10 on the first one and just hitting straight failure, and then having that again and just having failure with fatigue, and then getting it again and having like a forced rep scenario, right? Yep. That's a lot more work done versus just like somewhat moderate, not even close. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay. So when he used to write that in there, here's how I would do it. I would do my warm-ups, do my feeder sets, whatever, right? I would make that first set of 10. So let's if I'm going to quantifiable, put that into perspective on incline barbell press. I'm going to do 295 for my first set of 10, and I'm going to make it hard.
Yeah.
But I'm going to still have reps in the tank. Then I'm going to do 315, and I'm going to take that. It's going to fall somewhere in the 9 to 12 rep range, wherever failure is. Yeah. And then I'm going to drop back down to 225 for my third set. I'm going to pulse it on my chest, and I'm going to pulse the contraction and make it absolutely excruciating. So it's going to be almost like a moderate set, a top set, and a back off. That's how I always did it the whole time on his original programs when he used to write 3 sets of 10. Like that's how I would treat it. And when I got with him in person, he was like, "So that's how you do it?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Okay, cool. That's how I would do it too." So I was like, "Oh, I was onto something." Where I think, like you said, most people either just like cruise through 3 sets of 10 and just get 30 total reps arbitrarily, or they punch set 1 in the mouth, and then if the next 2 are just massive drop-offs. Because you can't.
That's how I do it.
Right. Yes. Right.
And usually, like the third set, I would either have the third set. I'd either like if we were doing incline barbell, for example, the first one I would do, uh, 315, and I would get like 11, and it was just that was like 11 was like assisted, right?
Yes.
And then the second one I would go for it again. I'd get like 8, and then the third one I'd take a point off, and I'd still get 10. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yes. Yeah,
and
because
then 10 was basically just fun.
Right. Right. You probably should just moved on to the next exercise, right? But again, that goes back to, I think that most just don't understand that concept of like application of true work. Like when it's time to pick up a set and finish it, like what that should feel like. And then if you can repeat that, you didn't finish the first one.
Yeah.
That's why the whole premise of the top set and back off is effective, because you literally have to pull weight down to get close to that rep total again.
Yeah.
And then people are like, oh, well, Chris, well, how much weight do you pull off? And I was like, well, that depends on what you do with your tempo and contractions and stuff. Like, because for me, for back offs, I've always loved to like really milk the negative, milk the stretch, don't get a stretch reflex, and then just crush a contraction. So like if I'm on a bar, whether that be a squat or a deadlift or a incline barbell press, like I'm literally going to pull a whole plate or more off of it to do my back off, where I think some people only may drop, say, like a quarter and repeat that. Like, but I've always thought about back offs as like making sure my execution is flawless, and then like really exaggerating negative, and then the contraction and stretch. Like,
it's always comical to me because like on back off sets for like when me and Zach train are hilarious, because first off, the back offs end up being way harder than the top sets, and it's like the weight cutoff is hilarious. Like we've done hammer incline Smith, not hammer incline press, right? And our top set we get 4 plates aside for like 14, and then we pull a plate off, so that's a 25% decrease,
right?
And we just make sure our form's locked in. We get like 8 reps,
right? Yep.
You know what I mean? And it wasn't what our form was sloppy on the first one. Like our form's like where I was, but we're just so fatigued from getting, because when I have Zach, I almost always am gonna make him give me an extra rep with a forced rep.
Right. Yeah.
Because he's there. Like I might as well.
Yeah. And you trust him to help you enough, but not too much. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly.
There's that line of a spotter where like guys rip it off you and it almost deters them. Like I might as well just set the weight down. Or you have the people who don't spot enough, and it's like, well, fuck, I might as well just set the weight down because I'm creeping an inch at a time. I don't even feel anything. It's dead now. Like,
yeah, exactly.
So yeah,
I mean, spotting is kind of a lost art, but that's probably a different podcast. But you're not absolutely right when it comes to that. It's just like everything needs to keep moving, but your job is not to remove the hard.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. And I don't, I think somebody too is like, they'll help, and it's like they're helping, and then the weight will actually decelerate or come back at you. And it's like, by then, like literally rip it off of me. Like, if it comes back at me, I don't want any more of it. My muscle is done.
You didn't help enough. Or like, it's funny too. It's like you only need to help in the positive.
Yeah, right.
Get your fucking hands out of there when I'm coming down with it. Like I promise you, I don't need help coming down with it.
A kid just tagged me in a Facebook hack squat video. So, okay, watch this. It's a reverse band hack squat. His training partner was assisting him on every rep of the positive. And I literally typed back in there, tell your training partner to stop stealing your growth. Get his hands off the machine until you need it. Like, you already have a reverse band on there, and then you're going to need help out of the hole. No, stop it. Cut it out. You either pull a plate or he needs to get his hands off the bar or machine.
Probably both.
Right. And listen, it was one of those thick bands. It was a thick green one. Like, it was a lot of removal of load. And then I'm like, bro, he needs to get his hands off of that. I mean, because just need to get off of it. Stop stealing my progress.
Right.
Stop helping. Oh, all right. So volume versus intensity. What can we do? We can do all of it, but you first have to learn intensity the proper way. And I think that's where we need to finish this, right? Is like, if you don't have someone to show you that. Probably the best way to learn it, I've always felt like, is like doing sprint intervals on a bike. 5 rounds, 15 seconds as hard as you can go. And then rest for 45. And I need you to literally get on there and pedal as if a bear is chasing you in the woods. And then that sensation is what every work set should feel like. It's that, like, if you had to get me to teach someone that without doing like hands-on in the gym, that's how I'd replicate it.
Yep, 100%.
And it's literally all out intensity until your legs stop. So
yep. And like that's like 15 seconds on, 45 seconds off. You know, that's like the really funny part. It's the same thing with training, right? That's where the intensity and volume come to a play, right? Yes, some of us have worked up our work capacity over time,
right.
But I see it all the time with programs. Like you'll have like 15 different exercises and 3 sets of whatever for each one. You know, like that's a lot.
Yes.
And like if you did those correctly, by the time you got to exercise 13, like you shouldn't be able to function.
Yeah.
In my opinion, right?
Agreed.
That's why that's where my volume, it's self-limiting.
Yes.
When with volume, because if I did leg curls, adductor, squats, leg press, by the time I'm done with leg press, like I'm pretty fucked.
Oh yeah.
I shouldn't be able to do 15 other things after that and still keep. And that's where most people, we all see it every time we go to the gym. Someone will have a super long workout and they'll put effort in the beginning, but they save effort from the first things so they have time for the last things. And though in reality, instead of like really putting any effort anywhere, they just spread it out super thin, and they more so are just fatiguing themselves. Like their muscle is fucking used to that. Like you're not gonna grow from fatigue.
No.
Like that's just what, like if you go outside and you start shoveling for 2 hours, you're gonna be fucking sore. Just shoveling dirt. Right. Your chances of getting bigger from that, slim to none. And that's the same thing you're doing if you just drag out like more tons of volume. And that's why intensity is like they play with each other. Yep. So if you're super fucking intense, like you're not gonna have super fucking high volume.
No.
Like unless you've worked into that.
Yes.
Like that's like the fun part of that, but it's just one of those like, well, like if you start like you said on the sprint intervals, by that 15 seconds of sprinting, like see if you can drag that out for another 15 seconds. That sprint, that run turns into a jog.
Yes.
And it's just like at that point you just need to rest, get back into a sprint.
Yep.
And if your workout goes from a sprint to a jog, it's like your intensity is gone.
If at any point the thought process of pacing comes into your brain, you've missed what we're doing, right? Like, and when I used to train people in person, a lot of times I'd jokingly come in like, Chris, we're going to do today. I'm like, caveman workout. And like, what does that mean? I'm like, you're in the dark, bro. I need you to go 100% in everything we're going to do. End of story. Yep. And some people like embrace that, and some are like, oh, I need to know what we're going to do. I'm like, we're going to do exactly what I was saying for legs, right? We're going to do leg curl, adductor, or leg extension, squat, leg press, and then we'll see what happens. Well, how many sets? Oh, your effort will dictate that.
Yep.
It's just literally that's what we did. Like it wasn't some elaborate scheme. It was just go in there and crank. And again, that's what I love about when you come in to train or we meet to train somewhere. Is it's a rough outline and the workout takes us where it's going to take us, and when we're done we mutually agree on that. You're good? Yeah, I'm good. All right, let's go look in the mirror, let's see what we look like. Done, go home and eat. Like, and there's never been a time where you're like, Chris, I got more. Except I don't think there's ever been a time where either of us have been like, okay, we're good. Like,
yeah,
the other one has more than us. Like, this is. And we've had periods of time where you're in prep and I'm in off season and flip-flop, both off season, both rebounding. So it's like, it literally comes down to, and that's something cool, I think, too, that neither of us look at a clock. It isn't like, oh, we've been here for 60 minutes. We've been here for 90 minutes. We'll be like, oh, that took 43 minutes.
It happens organically, right?
Yeah.
It's just the same concept. If I started sprinting from here until I stop sprinting, it's going to happen organically.
Yeah. Yep.
You're not going to find yourself doing that for 3 hours. You're not going to still be sprinting. You'll be fucking walking.
Right.
You know, like super easy to see that. It's just like as soon as you're done sprinting, it's over. You know, at that point, you're just adding more fatigue. It's like, and if you can recover from that, great. But chances are you aren't.
No, no. It goes back to that conversation of digging the ditch that you can't climb out of.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and I think that's what's really frustrating is people, I think it's a concept that they miss, right? Like surviving workouts versus progressing from them are two drastically different things. Like I can't remember who it was. I think it was Zach sent me one of his clients gets training from someone else. And the dude had this bikini girl on like, if my memory is right, it was like 40 sets of shoulders.
Yeah.
40. I'm like, first of all, how long did that take? Like, you're in there training shoulders for what, 2.5 hours? Like, come on. Like, it was ludicrous. It was 3 pages of a Word document. I'm like, okay, like literally you're just got to be bored at that point. Like, how many times can you side lateral, shoulder press, and rear lateral?
Yeah. Dude, it always makes me happy when I get someone and I'm like, well, what are you currently doing? They send me their program and I cut the sets down in half.
Oh yeah.
And they're like, this isn't enough. I'm like, make it enough. And then they start growing. They're like, oh, weird.
Right.
I'm doing less, but I'm, less.
Right.
It's like, actually,
I mean, you know some of those early John workouts where the volume was super low, right? And I came from a background of, man, we'd go in there and rage and just do set after set. And I'd look at that workout and like I knew in my heart I wasn't smarter than him. So I'm like, I'm not going to add stuff. Like if he says this is how much I need to do, is how much I need to do. But if I have biceps and I only have 6 opportunities to make them better, every one of those 6 sets are going to be finished. Like,
yeah.
What do you mean? I can't do 20 sets of biceps and 20 sets of triceps? Nope, I get 6. Okay, those 6 have to be done perfect or it doesn't count.
Yep.
And I think if more people took that thought process to training, they would probably find that like happy medium between intensity and volume, which is to me where you and I are always have been at. It's not super low volume on everything. Some things are less than others. Some things are more than others, but the body part gets finished. And to me, that's always been the answer because it works. And then guess what you do? You go home, you eat, rest, repeat.
Yep.
There's the answers. There's the secrets. 40 minutes in. How's that? Anything you want to add?
No, that's really about it.
I think I will finish with this. I always think that if you're married to one side of the aisle, your progress will be less.
Oh yeah, 100%.
There's no reason I can't learn something from both because we've all known pros who are great with low volume and pros that are great with high volume. You can't argue that. Dorian versus Jay Cutler, side by side, their peak. That's going to be a battle of 1 and 2 at the Olympia if they're both there, if Ronnie's not, right? And depending upon what you go for, if you like bigger and fuller, you're going to choose Jay. And if you like harder and nastier, you're going to choose Dorian, right? But those are going to be the best 2 guys in the world on that stage at that time. Both drastically different training styles that got them to that point. So to me, as I've said, and always, is if you open your mind and say, hey, that was successful for him. What can I learn from it? Okay, cool. Here's the opposite. What can I learn from that? And then how can we marry those and create a synergy? I think that is the true answer for ultimate progress, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
All right, guys.
It's actually kind of funny you say that too, because like the one thing that makes me laugh, like I feel like that it's debated a lot, but like graininess, people ask like what causes that, and I think you basically just covered that, right? The Dorian Yates was super grainy. He did low volume, and then you have Kai Green. If you look at his legs, they're pretty fucking grainy. And he did a fuck ton of volume, right? The graininess, in my opinion, comes from how far you can take a set.
Agreed. Yep.
And you get like, and it's pretty funny because it's drastically apparent. Like on stage, you see someone who's fucking grainy and someone who's like just round and bubbly but not grainy.
Yes.
You know what the difference was.
Right.
You
Agreed.
know, it wasn't the drugs, it was the effort.
Yes. Agreed. I mean, and I think about like just my body personally, right? If you look at my chest, or sorry, my quads and my shoulders, I feel like I can take those sets way deeper than I can my back because I have to think about so much more things with my back of like keeping it out of my traps, keeping it out of my arms, keep my lower back safe, right? With quads and shoulders, I can just take those so crazy, ridiculously deep. And that's why those muscles are the most separated and detailed and probably carry the least amount of fat. So,
Yep.
a very, very great point that most people miss. Oh, yeah. All right, guys, another great episode. If you guys have any topics you want us to cover, put them in the comments below. We'll go over it. If you have something you want us to rant on, that's what we kind of love, anyways. We were kind of chill tonight.
Yep.
Really beat anybody up.
Not yet.
No. Yeah, no, not yet, at least. So, anyways, for Chris, little Dave, we are out.
See you guys.